Driving a car doesn't necessarily mean you need to waste money. I've been doing this for the last 10 years where I've been buying cars and I've strategically bought them that allows me to drive them, put some mileage on them, enjoy them for a few, and then sell them. And most of the time I wind up breaking even. In some cases I lose a little money, and in some other cases I'll profit. But I hope these tips help you in buying your next car. Researching a car is probably the most important tip I'll give you. And I know it kind of seems obvious. Take the car you want, whether it's an SUV, a wagon, a crossover, a coupe, a sedan, a minivan, a pickup truck, whatever you're looking at, make a list of cars that fit exactly what you're looking for. And then once you do that, explore the options of those said cars, and then go over what the pros and the cons are of each of those cars. Do a quick Google search and Google, for example, Ford F-150 cons, Ford F-150 pros. And essentially what will happen is you'll see a whole list of people either on forums or reviewers that'll state the cons of those cars. And if it has anything to do with anything mechanical, stay away. It is not worth buying. Those cars tend to depreciate a lot more than cars that have cons, such as maybe the AC doesn't blow a little colder than it should. Simply because the AC not blowing a little colder than it should isn't going to cost the consumer a ton of money, but a car that is going to essentially have a transmission issue is going to cost the consumer more, which means people stay away from them. Research, research, research. Then comes the fun part, searching. Do a nationwide search for the car you're looking for. Yes, nationwide, go on cars.com, go on Car Gurus, Auto Tempest, whatever website that you would use to find a car, go on it, and when it tells you the range of radius, pick nationwide. That's going to show you every single car for sale in the model that you're looking for in the country. And then what you'll do from there is do lowest price. That's going to give you more or less of a baseline. The lowest price cars, whatever it might be, Honda Civic, for example, if you're looking for a 2019 body style Honda Civic, if you do the lowest price, you're probably going to get the highest mileage because they usually coincide with each other. So lowest price tends to be the highest mileage, and that's going to give you a general baseline to stick with. And then do the opposite, do highest price, and that'll tend to show you some of the lowest mileage, some of the higher prices. So that'll give you a base and that'll give you a max. So that, and then anything in between is what you're looking for. The goal is to get a car with as low miles as possible, closer to the base line, and that'll be a good buy. That'll be a good purchase, and that'll be something you could drive, put a little bit of mileage on, and you're not gonna essentially go lower because you're at the base. You're at where that car should be valued 10,000 miles from here. My third tip is gonna simply be availability. How easily or how hard is it to get said car that you're looking at? So if we're looking at a Lexus GS model, for example, and we do a nationwide search, and that search comes up with 50 cars. That tells you that there's only 50 cars in the entire country that's a Lexus GS model. And then if you want to narrow it down to options, you can, and usually that'll bring that number down, so you might have 20 cars only. And what that simply means is that there's probably a higher demand for that car, which means it's going to hold way better value than if there was 1,000 of them or 200 or 300 of them. It's going to tend to hold a little better value simply because they're a little harder to get. So look out for availability and look out for those cars that there isn't a ton of inventory of them. Tip number 4 is going to have to be rarity. Now, I know it coincides a little bit with availability, but availability doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a ton of cars. It just means there's not a ton for sale. Where rarity means there simply just weren't a lot produced. And that's a key factor in finding a car that's gonna hold value. A good example of that is the Honda Civic Type R LE, which is the limited edition, made in Phoenix Yellow. They only made a certain amount, and those cars are rare. If you go to look online, there's not a lot of them, and they sell for substantially more than they were even new. And you could probably drive it for a bit and you're not gonna depreciate it. My next tip is options. A lot of the times when people ask me, what car should I buy? I tell them, don't stick to one car. I know, okay, you want this, Toyota 4Runner and you want it really badly. But what winds up happening is you wind up having to wait a ton of time to find a good deal on this Toyota 4Runner. So if you wanted something comparable, that's probably not going to depreciate. You could go Jeep Wrangler, and it's still a good off-roader, and it's still going to do similar things that the 4Runner could do. Okay, don't kill me for saying that, but you need options. And the more options you have, the better chance you'll have at finding a car. Tip number 6 is an interesting one, and I'm gonna label it business. Can the car you're looking at be used for a business? And cars like the Corolla and Camry tend to be used as Ubers, taxis, or rentals. And pickup trucks can be used for construction. Big full-size vans can be used to either as passenger vehicles or cargo. Those cars, because they produce income for a business, tend to hold decent value because they are money-making cars. Let me give you my 5 good options and my 5 bad options that I would either stay away from or go to as far as when it comes to depreciation, because they simply just don't hold or do hold a good amount of value. So I'm gonna start with Land Rover. They make a beautiful truck, great for off-roading, but most of them just depreciate. And they don't tend to be the most reliable of trucks, but again, they just depreciate way too much. Number 4 would be Alfa Romeo. Stelvio is gorgeous, and I love what they've done with the Giulia, but again, they just don't hold good enough value for me to ever want to own one. Option number 3 would be Maserati. If you go look at the depreciation curve of any Maserati, you will be shocked. They just do not hold value. They're just far too expensive to maintain, and they're just far too complex and unreliable. My second option would be Volkswagen. Volkswagen, and put Audi in that same category, Volkswagen and Audi for number 2. They make a really good car. Audi has one of the best all-wheel drive systems out there, but very expensive to continue to maintain that over a certain period of time, so they just depreciate like crazy. And my number 1 option that I always avoid is Mercedes-Benz. They are just, I think it's because people just don't want to drive an outdated luxury car. People tend to drive those cars that are very status. Now here's my top 5 good options. Number 5 is Hyundai. They've had a major come up, and you could own a Palisade, for example, for a relatively low cost. People love the Hyundai Palisade. It's just a very good truck and with very good features, and it's something you would pay almost nearly double for any of the other competitors. So they just tend to hold a lot of value. My number 4 option would be Acura. You could drive a nice Acura TLX, Acura RDX, MDX, all of them, not lose a ton of money. The Honda would be my number 3. The Honda lineup is great. Honda is tried and true. They have proven that they are reliable. They have a good technology, and their cars tend to be relatively well equipped at even a base level. My number 2 would be Toyota. You could drive any Toyota, and the depreciation curve is very tiny. You're gonna drive them, and even if you don't want to sell it, you could keep them for probably longer than most of the other ones, and you're not gonna lose a ton of money on them. And year for year, they're not gonna cost you a ton on maintenance either. And they're just great cars. And my top pick, because I just think it's so good, because it offers you reliable and it offers you luxury, and that's Lexus. They make a fantastic lineup. You could go anywhere from the cars to the SUVs. You're gonna be driving in style, you're gonna be driving in comfort, and you're not gonna be losing a ton of money while doing so. So I definitely recommend it. Tip number 8, and I've touched on this several times already, is simply depreciation. What you do is, if you're looking at a body style of a car from 2018, we'll take a Mercedes GLE for example. That car, I did some research, at MSRP'd at about $55,000 to $60,000, right? 2018. 2020, fast forward to 2022, that's 4 years. And with COVID switched the pricings up a little bit, but COVID kept the prices of cars a little bit higher than usual. I found one online with 30,000 miles for $35,000. That means in 4 years, it depreciated anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000. Here's my 9th tip, and that's avoid outgoing models. And if you're looking at a car that came out with a new body style in 2017, and they're ready to revamp that car for 2023, what winds up happening is it won't be instant, but once that 2023 comes out, the older body style or the older models will depreciate faster. That doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna depreciate and tank, but they depreciate faster because no one wants to pay premium for an older body when they could just buy the latest and greatest. And my 10 tip is simply sell often. Do not hang on to these cars for a long period of time. 6 months to a year is probably the cycle that I usually work with. I sell my cars every 6 months to a year, and that allows me to own these cars, not lose a ton of money, and not have to, pretty much, I don't have to be worried so much about maintenance because I only put maybe 5,000 to 10,000 miles on them. And by then they don't need maintenance anyway, so I'm not spending on the maintenance on them. Those were my top 10 tips. I hope it works out for you. Put those into play, put them into practice when you're bored. Go do some research. Look at a car you've been wanting for a long time. Does that car depreciate? Does it not depreciate? Who knows? You'll know. They brought me great success, so I hope it brings you great success as well.